So today's video is going to be a little bit more quieter, calmer, and I'm just going to sit down and talk to you guys at a very emotional level because I think that this story is important. Today I'm going to be talking to you about struggles that pretty much each of you who, if you have been in the UK as a doctor or even as an immigrant, probably has gone through in your life as you've come to the UK. And this story is going to be somewhat of an inspirational one, but at the same time might be a teeny bit emotional because obviously the first year of this journey, when we go through and when we come to this country, we all have struggles, and I had my share of struggles as well. And I think it's important to share those emotions because it's only behind those emotions and struggles you not just inspire people, but at the same time there's a lot of growth that happens behind it. Today I'm a GP registrar. People tell me that I'm very good at talking to people. They say that I'm a good doctor, I'm a good clinician. One of the persons even told me that I'll be a good asset to the NHS. But this was not the story of the guy who you're seeing today and I'm speaking behind the camera. I was just like all of you when I came to the UK. I had a lot of struggles that I went through, and over the years I had to kind of overcome them one by one. So this story is going to be about every single person who comes to the UK, but in my point of view, because we all immigrants, doctors, we have the same kind of struggles that we basically go through in this journey once we come to the UK. My story starts in 2021. This was right after COVID when the borders had opened up. I managed to come to the UK with the first flight. When I came here initially, I was extremely scared and nervous because my first job was in London, and London being one of the most expensive cities in the world, the biggest struggles that I had initially was like cash. I didn't have enough money, and just like many of us, I came with maybe £2,000-3,000. I had worked my butt off back in my country to save that kind of money, and I brought it over here. The first thing that I was really worried about was where am I going to stay? Because at the end of the day, in the UK, in London, the most expensive thing is renting an Airbnb. But you know that story, when they say that, jiska koi nahi uska khuda hota hai. What that basically means that, when you don't have anybody, God is always there and helping you. And like an angel, I have a friend who basically came into my life. We've been friends for a very long time. And I was a little bit ashamed to ask him if I can stay at his place, but he straight up came and said, nothing doing, you're staying at my place until you figure out your job. And thank God that was my first thing sorted in the UK, because if you have got the rent sorted, then that really makes a lot of things sorted. And he was like, don't worry whether it takes you a month, 2 months, you can stay here as long as you want and you can get your job sorted. Which I'm eternally grateful to him, and I don't think I'll ever forget the thing that he did for me. Once I got to his house, the first thing that I had to figure out was, how do I get from his house to the workplace? And the workplace distance, even though I was in London is very big. And it sometimes can take very long to go from point A to point B. So my house was was on east part of London, whereas the work was in south part of London. So on an average work time, it would take me a metro, which I need to take for 45 minutes to an hour, then take a bus, and then take a train to get all the way to work. And that meant that if I had to get to work by 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to leave by, say, around at least 5:36 to make sure I reached there by time, which is a big struggle if you think about it. So once I had figured out how to get to work, I went and got my Oyster card, for which I need for the metro, and I was ready to go to work. The first day of work was a Monday morning. I had not even unpacked my bags because I had not unpacked my bags because obviously I was expecting not to stay and burden anybody for a long time. And whatever the clothes that I had from my small trolley bag, I wore them. It was decent enough. It was a shirt and a jeans that I wore, black jeans. It was not fully formal, but I had to do with whatever I had. And I thought maybe the first day I'm just going to get myself introduced to people, get used to the system, have a bit of shadowing. I got my train, went to work for the first day. I met the rota coordinator, and the first day at work was extremely overloaded with information. So figuring out how big is the hospital, which department is where, who is the consultant, and then they gave me the rota saying you're going to be doing these duties. And when they started telling me about duties, I already started getting anxious because I was like, I don't even know anything about the system and I'm now already being told about duties. Like Honestly, they were very good because they didn't put me on major duties till 4 weeks until I had completely gotten settled in. The biggest thing that I had, the biggest issue that I had was that there were so many systems that we had to learn. So they told us about a system that this is where you're going to be documenting patient's journey. They gave you another system. This is where you open up letters. A third system where you book locums. Then there were 4 applications. I came from a country where things used to be on pen and paper. And here now, so many systems on the same day. And I'm like, what is going on? And to be honest, I'm quite tech savvy. I'm just wondering the guy next to me, because he was not understanding a thing. And he was like, do you understand, dude? And I was like, I'm trying to, it's not easy. So the day went on. The first day they got me introduced to show me the different departments. Now I'm still trying to figure out where is the location, where do I need to go? And finally they put me into one of the consultants' clinic. And the biggest culture shock that I noticed when I got into the hospital was that a lot of people, because when you think about UK, you think a lot of white people. And I go into this department and all I see is immigrants, all internationals. And most of them were brown, just like me. And I was like, oh, I felt happy about that because, you thought maybe there's some kind of background understanding that we both will have. Oh boy, I was so wrong. So she sent me to the clinic and she said, you can go there and shadow this consultant. The consultant that I met, he was from an Asian background, Indian probably. And me being very nice person, I smiled at him. I said, hi, how are you? My name is, so and so. The first thing he did to me was scanned me from top to bottom. And I kid you not, he said, you're not supposed to wear that. And he said it in a very rude manner. It's kind of sad, when you think about it. Sometimes the people who you think are from own background sometimes can be the most rudest. And that's the first thing I realized when I walked to the NHS, because I was like, oh, maybe these are people from my background. They might be a little bit helpful, but no. And what was really sad on that time was that this guy didn't even ask me, where did I come from? Where was your flight? What was your struggle? It was like, the basic understanding of human emotions was not even there. And for a moment, I also thought that maybe this guy came to this country just like me 20 years ago. And he has probably forgotten the struggles that he has gone. He must be well settled now. He must have his job here. So I found that quite heartbreaking. I found that quite upsetting, that people like that can also be like this. This time, the only thing that I can remember is one poem from Hindi. It's like, हमें तो अपनों ने लूटा, गैरों में का दम था, हमारी कश्ती वहाँ डूबी, जहाँ पानी कम था. Basically, what that poem basically means is like, expect betrayal from the people of your own. Although this wasn't a betrayal, but that's how it really felt. I'm still thick-skinned. I took it. I normally take things like a champion, but it kind of gave me the lesson that, never to trust anybody. In fact, don't trust the people from your own background. At least just be nice to people, but just be aware that there are people like that. That was my first day. I went back home. Obviously, I finished work at 6 o'clock, and now there was another 2-hour journey getting back home. By the time I got home, it was 9 p.m. You get where I'm coming from? Welcome to the culture of UK, where basically you start work early, you finish work late, and then you sleep for less, and then you play for the weekend. And that was what was the beginning of understanding of what UK was going to be for me. Tough, but an important lesson learned. Regarding work, I went back. I thankfully got a different team, not the same consultant, thankfully. I got a different team, and the team was very supportive. There was a Pakistani guy. I still think he was one of the most God-sent person for me, because he really guided me through the entire process. My consultant was amazing, also an Asian, but he kind of saw that I was a very genuine person, and he wanted to take me under his wing, taught me everything. He wanted me to become a surgeon, and I was like, nope, that's not something I would want to do. Over time, with work, there were struggles. There were struggles with understanding the system, but one by one, little by little, I overcame them. So one day at a time. And I tried to be nice to people. The nurses were extremely helpful. You always had, these odd people who would be a little bit rude, which is kind of, I think, the culture right now. But most of the people tend to be very helpful. And the rude ones, you just ignore them, brush it off. Because, as I said, you and I are both thick-skinned. We can take this. There was work-related struggles. There were struggles outside work as well. One of the biggest struggles was getting set in this country, to get part of this country. And the first thing that I wanted to do was get a house. And one thing I realized that to get a house in this country, you needed a guarantor, which was very odd because when I came from Sri Lanka, all you needed to get a house was you contact the agent, they show you the house, you give them the money, you get the house. But over here, it's a different process. You find the house, then you apply for the house, and then they're going to scan you, with your jobs and everything. And then they decide to give you the house. And I don't know how some people who come to this country figured it out, but thankfully I had my friend. He was like, you know what, I'll be the guarantor for you. I know you're a good guy. I know you're not going to mess me up. So he was the guarantor, thankfully. And with the house, I wanted to make sure that the house was a price that I could afford. Because I came with very less money in this country. I didn't have, and did not know how much I'm going to be making. So I did not want to overshoot my boundary. Although people said, your salary is going to be this much, but after tax, I did not know how much money I'm going to be getting after tax. I wanted the house to be not far from the hospital and at the same time not too expensive. This would mean that I would save money on traveling and also save money on time, because coming back at 9 o'clock and repeating the process at 5 o'clock in the morning became extremely exhausting. I had to keep looking. I went and scoured Zoopla, and I think that's one of the websites that I would recommend. Scoured Zoopla. I would email back to back because I felt that I was being a burden to my friend, although he said, no, you're fine, you're a family. Finally, after looking at 2-3 houses, I looked at my first house, I liked it, I put in my application, rejected. I put in my second application for the house, rejected. And while I was applying for houses, I was juggling this between work. Imagine that. Sometimes I would want to get a house, but I'm supposed to be at work. And the viewing is during the day on a weekday. So when I asked them, can I do the viewing for Saturday? By the time Saturday came, the house is gone. So it was like I was trying to play, catch up. Once I got the house, that's when I felt that I was a little bit settled and my life was just beginning. Until there was another problem. And the problem was that I still did not have a vehicle. And I know some people say, oh, London, you don't really need a vehicle. Well, that's central London. I was not living in central London. I was living on the south. So yes, you do need vehicle. Getting a car basically meant I was going to open my boundaries to a lot of these things. What that meant is that I can actually travel freely around the country. I can go wherever that I want. And then I will not just be bound by the two boundaries of, going to work and coming back. Because what's the point of life? I had left everything back at home and moved to this country just so that I do this routine, and that just made no sense whatsoever. And that's something that I wouldn't want for anybody else. I did meet a couple of friends who were like a little bit scared. They were like, no, I'm not going to get my car now. I even met a guy who was like in his 5th year of being in the UK. He still hadn't got a car, and he was telling me like you just got here, why are you getting a car? The funda was very simple. You get a car mainly so that you can start driving. And once you start driving, you get comfortable. Then you don't have to spend thousands of pounds to pass the driving test. And that was my goal. My goal was to get a car which was reliable, that gets me to and fro. It's a hardy car and one that I can use for a couple of years. I'm not a show-off type of person. I'm a very simple person. So I did not want to go for the most newest or the latest car and put a loan and just burden myself with it. I'm not that type of person. Now that I go back and think about it, I think that is one of the most difficult things for somebody new to do. Because if you have to go and find a car, you need to, first of all, shortlist a couple of cars. And then you need to kind of go and look for these cars. For me, thankfully, my friend who has been there for me throughout and still is there for me, he came on a weekend and we basically went around looking at different cars. So I remember there was a day we drove almost around entire London and we had seen 4 to 5 cars. And because of that, I was able to get my car within the 2 days of when I started looking. And the car that I ended up getting was a Mercedes. Now you must be thinking, simple guy and Mercedes do not go together. Well, it's an old Mercedes. It's not a new one, but it's still a good car. I bought this in my first year when I came, and thankfully it still works pretty well and didn't give me a problem. But I do understand that, that is such a big struggle, for a lot of people when they come to this country, because getting the right car is extremely important, because that will mean how much of a headache you're going to be having in the long term. And I think having a friend like that did really put me at ease and got my car. So finally, I now had my own house, I had got the job sorted, and I had my car sorted. It took a couple of months for all of these things to happen. It didn't happen all together, but slowly and surely, I started feeling comfortable. Initially, I remember when I came to this country, I remember £1 used to seem like a lot of money, which is quite obvious, isn't it? The guy who just brought £2,000 to £3,000 to his name, a pound would still mean a lot. Slowly and surely, I started getting comfortable. I started making new friends, and I started integrating better into the country. 1 year down the line of being in the UK, I'd achieved so many things. Work-wise, I was doing well. I had got my CREST form signed and I had started getting ready for my exams to get into GP training. I had got a car for myself. I was driving all around the UK. And also I had passed my driving test and got my full UK license. And number 3, most of all, I had started making friends and slowly becoming a part of this country. But when I look back at that first year, it was a tough year for me. It was extremely tough with everything that was happening and so many hurdles that I had to jump. That first year, because I was so stressed out and because I had so much hurdles to cross, it made me stronger. It gave me the confidence that, yes, you can do it. And things got better. I started having friends. I started getting a community of people. Ramzan became better because, as a Muslim, we tend to have Eid and things like that. So found a community over there. And slowly and surely, things became better. So this is why I made this video. I think if one of you out there right now is either moving to the UK, planning to move to the UK, so there might be people who will tell you a lot of things and scare you because, it's easy to scare. It's easy to talk about the negative things. But I'll tell you one thing. Even in those negative things, there is a positive that can be taken out. It just depends on the viewpoint of the person. So depending on how you view things, a negative can be turned into a positive. And that's what I always believe in. So that this video I wanted to make, not just to bring out my story, because people tend to look at the story and see, oh, this guy is doing well, he's settled down, he's in training. But behind all of this, behind every single person and behind you, behind every other immigrant who is in this country, we have a journey, we have a story, and we have our struggles. And I think by sharing these struggles, I possibly made some kind of impact. And if you are struggling at this point, understand that there is support. If you have any other questions, I'm always available to help. You can always comment on my comment section and ask me. And I've got a Facebook group as well. And I will be continuing to make a couple more videos, about my life in the UK and about life of other doctors in the UK, because I think that is a story that is still unheard of. All of us, most of the time, go through this journey in silence and suffer in silence. One person's weakness can be another person's strength. And sometimes sharing and being vulnerable can really, really help everybody. And all of us are just trying to do the best and live the best life that we can. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, comment in the comment section below, subscribe, and I will see you another time with more interesting stories and more interesting videos. Take it easy. Peace.